Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Anthony Rose with us today that's been using the Wispr platform that we're going to talk about today. It's like voice dictation. And yeah, he's the founder of SeedLegals, pretty interesting guy, living in New York, I believe, and from London. And yeah, he's built a bunch of companies that we're going to talk about today. Six Tribes and yeah, SeedLegals is current one. I see Q Jam as well. So just excited to get into it. Anthony, can you give us a brief overview about who you are, why you're that way, and what you're up to nowadays?
Yeah, so thank you very much. So I'm Anthony, founder and CEO at SeedLegals. My background years ago, I used to head up BBC iPlayer, the UK's version of Netflix. After I left the BBC, I built a startup, sold it, built a startup, sold it, invested in a few, got tired of paying lawyers, met my co-founder, an ex-VC and serial angel investor, and created SeedLegals so that no one else has to go to lawyers. So we're a 160 person company based in London. And if you're a startup and you're fundraising, you'd get on our platform to do all the documents for getting investment ready and raising investment. And we've expanded to New York. So these days I spend part-time London, part-time New York. I'm in New York right now. There are like 50,000 UK startups on our platform. Like most of all UK startups are on our platform. So I talk to a lot of founders, and I love sharing experiences to help all founders, and maybe we'll touch on some of that over here. But in the past, years ago, I used to be with Kazaa, the music file sharing company. So, if I look back over my career, it's been disrupting music and CDs and vinyl with streaming, and then disrupting broadcast television with on demand, and now really disrupting law and legals, and democratizing the way that people can contract with each other without having to pay $1,000 an hour to a lawyer in between.
Yeah, because that's been a big pain point, right? I always hated dealing with lawyers. It's always last recourse as well. It's when you have a litigation or when you're about to sue someone. I never personally sue someone. I threatened because I'm not an asshole, and I don't like spending my time in courts. I'm way more productive. Spending my $5,000 an hour on productive stuff, right? And yeah, it's quite interesting because as of late, there's been AI, and I have my legal GPT. It's probably not enough for very serious and high stakes stuff like people investing in my company or me investing in other companies, and that's why I contract 1% lawyers, like very expensive and pro ones. They still have some value, but I guess SeedLegals is in between there. What's a specific pain point you're solving? What's the price of that, and who are you targeting precisely?
Right, great point. So when it comes to fundraising, ironically, the documents for fundraising have been standardized over decades. What you really want to negotiate is like, how much am I raising? Will the investor get a board seat? What's the valuation? And there are like a dozen key things. And the way it works is, let's say you're investing in my company. We would get on a call and we would negotiate most of these things. And as the founder, there's an information asymmetry. You know more as the investor than I know as a founder. So my goal on SeedLegals is to empower founders so that they don't do things like have more investors on the board than founders, and then you get fired by your investors. So normally what happens is, you'd call up and we'd have a thing, and great, I'm raising $1 million at a $5 million valuation. But it turns out funding rounds at that level are remarkably self-similar. So instead of spending huge amounts to create lots and lots of papers, contracts that nobody understands, on SeedLegals, we take you through a nice workflow. Who do you want on the board? What happens if this happens? And then we have data, our thermometer, to show what's market standard. So you're not the only idiot pushing back against the investor or agreeing to what they want. And
Yep.
in the UK, we've proved the model. Like something like a third of all early stage UK fundraising goes through our platform. Whereas in the US, what's happened is because lawyers charge $30,000 or $50,000 or more for a funding round, people use safes, the agreements they download off the internet, to do funding rounds. But what you've seen is something new, which is the rise of AI. And I think what happens is AI is brilliant for getting you like 90% of a contract, but it could be dangerously wrong. So I think what's going to change is people are going to use AI to like build much of the contract and then go to a lawyer to sanity check it. And instead of paying a lawyer for 10 hours work, they'll pay them for 1 hour work. But when it comes to the fundraising part, the SeedLegals platform sorts all of that for you. But it's not just the contracts, it's the cap table, the negotiation, always on. And in fact, I love to think, what would a lawyer do? And we'll do completely the opposite. So there's no billing by the hour. It's on 24/7, 5-minute response time on web chat and so on. And it's a formula that, clearly we've seen works.
But yeah, I love the website. First, very clear. It shows that you invested into that one. I mean, 15,000 customers. What's your MRR right now? Must be pretty gigantic, over 6 figures, I guess.
Yes, yeah, we do a decent revenue. And, interestingly, for a company that specializes in fundraising, we've been, we haven't raised huge amounts. We've raised about $8 million over the year, which is for a 7-year-old, 160-person company, is a lot less than many companies. And we like the idea of getting to, cash flow break even and growing organically, which is a trend that changes. So, in 2021, the goal was raise tons of money. And then in 2023, when it all went pear-shaped, it's like, thank God we didn't raise lots and spend lots because we'd be dead. The companies that are growing organically, cash flow break even, it's the new norm. And that, of course, will be cyclic and change again in the future.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Like the COVID stimulus checks that happen, and everyone's spending like there was no tomorrow. And nowadays, people are paying the price, but the AI craze is still fully on, right? So it's like if this hasn't slowed down much. So let's double click on your fundraising philosophy. Like, it's rare to meet your kind, like to like people that want to sort of almost bootstrap or build revenue first before going to investors. Why are you doing that? Do you feel that you're maximizing the potential of the company doing that?
Well, it's interesting. My co-founder, Laurent, genius, ex-VC and serial angel investor, he's the financially disciplined one, and I'm less so. So in the nicest way, we have a gentle debate every few months or years about, I go, yeah, let's raise tons. We'll launch in 17 countries and we'll build all these other products. And he's going, let's not do that. Let's do this. And then as times change, sometimes he's right and sometimes I'm right. In 2021, maybe I would have been right. In 2023, he was definitely right. So, but I have to say that in previous startups, which were more sort of social networking startups, you have to go big or, to have a financial model. In a B2B SaaS company, you can get revenue early on and get to that cash flow break even. And as a founder, you sleep a lot better when your money in the bank at the end of the month is about the same or greater than at the beginning of the month. And if you've raised a ton of money and it's going down at a rate, if you don't fundraise again, you're dead. And that is super stressful. So I'm actually really delighted that at SeedLegals, I can sleep well because we have been financially disciplined.
Right. And founder longevity is something that's not often discussed about, right? Like everyone wants to go in Elon style. Most end up in flames and get founder PTSD, never start a startup again. They go out to work at a fancy VC or 9 to 5. What do you have to say about that? And also, do you feel that your risk tolerance nowadays isn't what it was when you were in your first startups?
It's a great point. So, I mean, I've been around for a while. I've still got my hair. It's still not grey. So, but, as they say, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And, it's always great when you hire people in a company, particularly in the early stages, and they're like super enthusiastic. They're putting in an insane number of hours, but that's a red flag. It's not going to work. There's going to be an expectation mismatch between what they think is going to happen and the reality for how things really evolve. And on my side, I guess I've found that work-life balance. My wife probably disagrees and says it's crazy, but my day probably I'll get up at like 10 a.m. or so.
Wow.
I'll work until 7, which is basically Zoom calls most of the day, then dinner with my wife. And then at about 10 p.m. till 2 a.m., I'll put on some headphones, listen to music, and get through, or try to get through emails, writing code. I still do some legal coding, documents. And it's that chill out zone that I really, really like. So, but I have to say, there are a lot of incomings, and dealing with all the incomings is challenging, which comes on to the voice to text with AI.
Yes.
So, when you do a lot of emails, it's a lot of typing, and your brain is thinking at a particular rate, and your fingers are going at a lot slower rate. So you look at, all the stuff you want to get through, and it's such a chore. Like, I have to type all the stuff. And I've tried, Dragon Speech and the Microsoft Speech and the Google, and they're all terrible. And then I came across one called Wispr Flow, and I thought I'd give it a go. And it's awesome.
Yes.
It makes some mistakes. You have to be very careful. You have to proof it. But I can now essentially type at 140 words per minute, which it tells me is in the top 2 or 3% of all speakers, which is great. I have to say I can do like twice as much stuff in the same time. It's amazing. Sometimes the mistakes it makes are howlers. I, messaged somebody about slacking my EA, and it said something about slapping my EA. It's like, okay, I definitely need to fix that one. But for the most part, it's unbelievably clever working out paragraph breaks and working out what you do. And I can see, I've only been using it for a couple of months, but each iteration they improve the AI. But I'm a bit worried because, like AI often hallucinates. And the latest versions seem to be, essentially what you want is you want the AI to remove the ums and the ahs and realize where sentences start and stop, but not be creative with what you're saying. And it's begun to become a little creative, making up some stuff. It goes, maybe I didn't quite understand this, but I know you've said these things in the past. So I'm just going to put this in here because historically you might have said something like this at this point. And it's very clever. It's a bit like a child that gets ADHD. But I have to say, it's like, firstly, it's way more productive. And secondly, it's so much more fun. Because although the other person isn't there, it's like you're having a mini discussion with them. You're talking with them, and then you kind of look at it, and then you hit send. So I really like it. But it does use a fair bit of CPU. So after using it, I then went out and bought like the world's fastest computer. So
which is?
Well, it's a B-Link sort of small computer, but it uses the latest AMD processor, and I always run Passmark performance on it, and it says it's the 99th percentile on CPU. It's like a 26,000 Passmark, so it's way fast. So now, and I bought 2 of them, one for London and one for New York. So there's clearly my investment in this. I also have a Lumina AI-powered camera. That also hallucinates sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a fun webcam, which comes with this color correction card, which you hold it up and then it corrects. But occasionally it forgets and then everything goes green. So
you're like alien green. People are like, what is this?
As your life gets more AI powered, it gets like 99% up advantage and 1% of like slight hallucination. So
interesting stack. Like,
yeah.
I have an M2 and M3, and the camera's pretty good on that, So it's, that would be the simple Charles stack. And what I liked about Whispers is your last point, because I tried it. It wasn't for me. First, I type incredibly fast, and second, I have a GPT that I just feed my emails to. I even have a Chrome extension that I built myself to reply to these emails. So I'm somewhat good on that level. But the last point you made is very important because it humanizes the interactions. Like if you're talking to someone, and sometimes you read emails and you type something. If you read that thing out loud, you're like, oh, I sounded like a dick. Why did I actually wrote it that way? And if you read it out loud, if you tell it out loud, it sort of humanizes the full interaction. which is super interesting. Now, what other AI stacks do you have nowadays to either run your company or what you're building with Seed Legal?
Well, you've asked a really important question, which is, as a CEO of a hopefully hot tech company, you're thinking, should my team completely run everything on AI? And if they're still coding, dude, you should be vibe coding everything. Or is it just not exactly a gimmick, but super premature? And your
Yes.
developers should be doing things the reasonable way and so on. And I think most founders, CEOs, and so on are grappling with that. And if you just read what's on X, you'd believe if you've still got a dev team, you're wasting your money, you should fire them all and just vibe code everything. But that's not the case. And so I'm pushing across the board our team to do more AI. We've got ChatGPT team account. I make sure everyone's got it and uses it. And every week on our team stand up, or company wide stand up, I look for examples of how people are doing things. My marketing team vibe coded an event site, which was amazing. So and we are developing AI for Copilot for companies, which is going to be amazing. And we use AI for checking documents and so on. So I'd like to do more, but also don't want to give you legal documents that hallucinate. They need to be 100% correct. So we're going to use it for our internal use, but you're not going to have like just AI generated documents, foisted on customers, because that's not really reliable at this time.
And do you vibe code yourself? Because that's a revolution in itself. I mean, it doesn't code fully functional working apps. It's like mostly prototypes at this stage. But if you know how to code and open cursor, you can get to a working app real quick. Have you tried it yourself? And how do you think this is actually revolutionizing the startup world?
Right. So here's my I do lots of startup mentoring and startup talks, and I always say, once upon a time, build it and they would come. That was the old days. You'd build a nice building and eventually a lot of capex and people would come. And then came the rise of agile development and MVP. So you'd make a prototype and then you test a clickable prototype on Figma or Canva or something. But now you can use Lovable to make something, or one of the others, to make something that's actually kind of workable, which is amazing. But it's still unlikely to be your actual tech stack and so on. So it means that anyone in the company, before you go build something properly, you can now take the next step up from that Figma prototype. It can even do something. So now that I'm in New York, I go to lots of startup events, and there are lots of people who've got these event listing sites, and they've all got the most god-awful, terrible UI. So I thought one Sunday a few weeks ago, I'm just going to use Lovable to make an event site myself that's going to be halfway decent, and I could get the input feeds from all these others and come up with something. And I spent like literally an hour or two and came up with something. It didn't quite work. It was pretty cool. But I was hugely impressed when my marketing team on their away day came up with something that really did work and was much better. It hasn't made it into production, but I was impressed. It would have cost, previously $20,000 to get a team to build something, and like in a few hours, they created it themselves. But I think this is a problem. It's the gap between it looks amazing, but it now needs a login, and it needs a follow button, and it needs a personalization, it needs a filter. And there's not an as obvious a way of incrementally improving it without needing your developers. But I think on the flip side, you've got your old school developers who are coding the old way and refusing to switch over to the new way. Some of them do, some not. And how do you get the best of both? And I'm wondering at some point if the older generation of developers will become dinosaurs because they're just refusing to adapt, like people who refuse to use cloud servers once upon a time. No, I need a physical Cisco box right here. So I'm intrigued as to how that will play out.
Yeah, it's like the 1% super coders. I think these people share the same skills as 1% entrepreneurs, 1% salespeople. They constantly adapt. They go out of their comfort zone. They're incredibly gritty. They're creative. What does it take for a founder to be successful nowadays? What is the full skill stacks according to you?
Well, you read on Twitter the rise of the unicorn, the one-person unicorn. I think this is bullshit. So the idea is you don't need a dev team because you can sort of vibe code, and you don't need a marketing team because you'll have AI agents doing it. But in any decent startup, there's like so much stuff that needs to be done. As soon as you've got customers, there's filings and taxings and reconciliation, and you still need SEO. I mean, you've got a team, they're all doing things. So yes, they can all do things more efficiently, but I'm quite surprised that anyone sanely thinks that all the functions can be replaced by agents, and that one person has all the time in the world to program all these agents to do all these things. The other thing is, if your business is making money, making revenue, the cost of a few extra people is nothing in the scheme of things. If you're a unicorn company, why would you not have hired a few other people? You don't need to be 1,000 people, but 50 people, the cost of that is naught compared to the valuation. So it just simply makes no sense that you're going to go for, unless you want to try and prove a point, but it's not a rationally useful thing to aim for. Oh, you've gone silent. Sorry.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay.
You're back.
Yeah,
You're back.
I agree with that right now. But when the agentic revolution is going to kick in, which is Q3, Q4 this year, we're going to see like something alien, we're going to see agents that manage agents. And that's when like hiring humans will not make any sense. Right now, you need to code these agents, but soon enough, you're going to have agents that are going to, pretty much do everything. There's still going to be challenges, right? Like connecting these agents together, monitoring their performances, analyzing. These are going to be the new jobs they talk about, like the agents manager. But I still think a bunch of jobs will be slashed. And I think some humans won't be able to recuperate from that and try to adapt and compete with agents because of their own mindset, right? They will prefer to just complain and protest other than adapting. And I see that because there's trends like the zombification of brains, like with TikTok and Netflix, porn and ice cream and all of that. So I don't think that a good like 20, 30, if not 70, in a very bad case, percent of humans will be able to adapt to that.
Well, I think this is obviously the super fascinating thing, because as a founder or as an entrepreneur, you start off by looking to disrupt some existing way of doing things. But the problem is, at what point do you get disrupted by the next generation? And
I'll get disrupted. I'm already being disrupted like crazy.
Well, unless you are constantly looking to disrupt yourself, you're going to be disrupted. So, for example, at SeedLegals, building an automation platform that means you don't need a lawyer for a class of things, but maybe there'll be DAOs or blockchain things that mean you don't need contracts at all, or maybe AI will mean that people, as an investor, my AI agent should find companies, and as a founder, my AI agent should agree deal terms with investors, and instead of me doing SDR outreach to hundreds of investors on LinkedIn, my agent should do that, and their agent, if they like each other and agree the deal terms, should do it, and then it should create a safe on our platform instantly, which will be e-signed by whichever agent has legal authority to do it. So as soon as you think about that, are you in the crazy, we're going to build shit that nobody wants, or are you, if you don't do that, are you just a dinosaur?
Yeah, and the world is pretty infinite, right? Like even in an AGI world, there will constantly be new challenges and pain points to solve. If humans or robots, and both are going to be the same in the end, I think we're eventually going to merge with robots. So that's sort of unevitable. And I think it's in us, right, as humans, constantly adapt and take risk and put ourselves on the lines and sort of surmount challenges, right? Like climb the mountain up and enjoy the view once we're on the top. So I think it's sort of in us, in our DNA, right? It's just gonna be quite intriguing, right? Because I'm that type of guy, you are too, right? Like highly entrepreneurial, highly about disrupting your own self. And I'm pretty sure that some days you reflect like, hey, most of what I did today could have been automated by an agent, and the agent could have done it faster, better.
Faster. I'm still working on the better, but yeah. I mean, I would love obviously that that's the case. And then the question is, do you end up with more chill time on the beach, or do you work just as hard but accomplish more? And or is it a bit of a pipe dream that you're now spending more time controlling the agents and not more? Anyway, we're
Yeah.
all going to find that out starting, as you say, in Q3 and beyond.
Right. Yeah. And recovery time is important, right? But I get sort of bored on the beach, right? Sort of, I think you'll agree with that. Or we shaped our brain in some way. But I think, yeah, recovery is quite important. So to each their own recovery activity. And yeah, that would be a nice question for you in New York with like the ambulance noise and all of that. Like New York is quite go, go, go. But yeah, I know you need to go. Ant, where can people find out more about you?
Right. So LinkedIn, Anthony Rose. Head over to the SeedLegals website or Anthony at seedlegals.com. And if you're a founder and you're fundraising, I'm always there to personally help, and our platform is there to help you get the investment in sooner and less expensively than the previous ways of doing it.
Perfect. So that was